Eu sei. Mas vê lá se consegues ouvir. Consegues ouvir?
Alô, alô?
Quem foi?
Oh, hello, hello. Hello, we are about to start our first session. Yeah. Okay, so we are going to start our first session. But before we start, we have a very important tradition that we need to follow. Every year, since 2011, the previous chair of the conference gives the Mexican rattle to the chair of the next conference, yes? That's a very important tradition here. So I will ask Dan, who was the chair of the previous conference, to officially give the power of the creativity to the chair of this conference, program chair, so we can start now the conference. Yeah. So each time you pass the time, I will the chair of the session will do that. Okay. So that means finish, please. Okay. So we are going to start with the first talk. This talk, because of visa issues, has to be done virtually online. So we are going to present here the presentation, the talk, and after that we will have some minutes to have some questions and answers. Yes. So
Sorry.
For my presentation, I will first have an overview of the work, then cover some of the backgrounds, both cultural and typesetting wise, and then I will go through my method. Finally, I will go through some experiments and demonstrations. Here, let's start with the overview, where I will be talking about CJK, what it is, what are the challenges in CJK, and our proposed method in a nutshell.
supposed to have the author here on live in case you want to ask any questions. Jing Tao.
I'm here.
Okay. So questions for Jing Tao. Some question?
Thank Tao for a great talk.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm using the microphone now. So the characters looked really nice, but it wasn't clear to me how you decide how you can instruct the system which character to write. How do you condition the system to write specific characters?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Did you hear my question?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. I can get your question. The question is how to. There seem to be some lag.
I'll try to ask the question one more time. How do you condition the network so that it generates specific characters instead of just some distribution of characters?
Okay, I will just talk in blended because there seem to be some lag between me and between when I'm speaking and my voice being like heard. So basically, we have like a conditioned diffusion model. So we inject then by specifying the condition character as a side channel in the diffusion model, the UNet, we can instruct the system to put the desired glyphs.
Okay. Well, I think, thank you very much, Yan Tao. Now we have Meng Yang, who is going to talk to us about exploring real-time music to image system for creative inspiration in music creation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ming Yang from Sensei Lab Monash University in Australia. Today, I'm going to talk about our work on behalf of my co-author, Teresa and John. They're both here. So our work is exploring the real-time music-to-image system for creative inspiration in music creation. The artificial intelligence has achieved remarkable results in music generation and analysis, as well as in its application to co-creation with human musicians. So the conventional paradigm of this application have focused on the AI-generated music response, which effectively make the music creative process much easier and lowers the barriers to creative engagement. However, it's also leave less space for the ideation and inspiration. Therefore, rather than generating the musical results, our work focuses on the creating system for the music inspiration. So we employ the visual stimuli associated with the perceived emotion of the music as a source of inspiration. So in this non-musical and subjective way, our system provides a cross-modal creative experience. Our system based on the application of state-of-art generative AI models. So the system consists of three components. a MIDI keyboard, a GPT-based music analyzers for music analysis and prompt generation, and an image generator based on the Stable Diffusion. So when the user play the keyboard, the music play is fed into the system as the real-time MIDI information, which is converted to the text-based music format for GPT-4 to analysis, and which is then generates a description of the visual imagery evoked by the music based on the emotion and the musical features. And the generated result will serve as a prompt to generate the to generate the visual image, which is displayed to the users and forming a real-time music to image system. So this is how the system set up. So we have a keyboard here and also have a large screen in front of musicians, so the musicians can see what has been shown easily without disturbing. And why we use image as inspiration? So visual elements such as the paintings and landscape can inspire musicians. So we hope the visual imagery from the music can bring the musicians a different creative experience. And how we build the connection between the music and the imagery. We use emotion as a medium, since the visual imagery has been identified as a unique emotional mechanism. It's kind of like the mental projection of the listener's feeling about the music. We hope the generated visual imagery to be emotionally resonant with the input music, enhancing the user's emotional experience during the creative process. In this work, we particularly explore the use of LLM for music interpretation. So music is essentially a series of note and rhythm, which can be seen as another form of language for LLMs to learn, understand, and generate. Although LLMs are not mainly designed for the natural language, but their powerful pattern recognition and the context level understanding ability show this potential of application in music. So our work represents music as a text-based music input, the ABC notation, which is a concise and computer-readable format to translate the music into the plain text, as the example shown here. So the series of notes are represented as corresponding letters, and some basic music informations, musical features are included in the head informations. So we first test ability of GPT-4 to read the text-based music. We use ABC notation as input and ask what musical features it could extract from the given ABC notation pieces. So here the example I showed come from the first 12 bar of Chopin's prelude in E minor. So let's listen to these pieces together and see how GPT-4 interpreted these pieces. So the GPT-4 can extract some features from ABC notation correctly, like the time signature, the tempo, the key signature. But those features actually come from the header information of ABC notation directly. But it does infer some features from melodic patterns and structures. Like here, it's inferred like the repetitive motive and variation. So we conduct further experiment to test whether GPT-4 can infer some subjective features like emotion from ABC notation. The results show the GPT-4 inferred the emotion of these pieces as the sadness, introspective, and contemplative pieces. So from the musical features like the key, the temperature, the tempo, rhythm, and melodic pattern. And based on the abstract feature and inferred perceived emotion, this is how GPT-4 interpreted these pieces. So it's described these pieces as a long, reflective figures working through a misty moonlit cobblestone street, embracing the serious night. And this is the image generated by the system. And here I want to show more examples. So first one. So the system interpreted this piece as kind of like the dramatic urgency, and it's also recognized it's the classic genre. So the system described these pieces as like the storming sea at night with wave crashing against a lone lighthouse on the cliff. So this is actually one of my favorite example of the system generated, because this one is really like close to my mental image. Okay, the next example. So the system generates pieces as a lively jazz club from the like 1920s, with all the dancers and people crowded and with the musician are performing. I also have more examples, but due to the time constraint, I couldn't go through them all. But we can see that the classical examples are literally like the landscape or atmospheric thing. And the pop and previous jazz examples generate more like the tangible or realistic scenario. So we conduct a user study to let the user actually create music using this system to reveal how it's in fact user's creative process. We evaluate this system under two music creation scenarios, the improvisation and composition. In phase 1 of the experiment, participants are asked to improvise with the system for 10 minutes. And in phase 2, participants were asked to compose the short pieces of music with their own choice. And there's no stylistic or any other restriction on the music. These phases last 20 minutes. We recruit 5 participants, 4 males and 1 female, whose age from 26 to 46. And the participants were recruited based on the criteria of being musicians with professional training in music, experience in play the keyboard or piano, and experience in composing at different levels. We collect qualitative data using the semi-structured interviews. So in the interview, we ask participants about like the usual source of inspiration when making music, the emotional association between the system-generated image and the music they play, and the impact of the system on the music creation, overall experience with the system, and suggestion on improvements. Before starting discussing about the system, participants were first asked about their usual source of inspiration in their music creation experience. So the purpose of asking this question is to find out whether the participant had previously experience of getting inspiration from the visual imagery. So 4 of the participants were usually inspired by music directly, either from the instrument or from the inspiring melodies. And only 1 participant report getting inspiration from the narrative or story behind the music. Participants describe the impact of the system on their music creation process in different ways. Participants mentioned that the system provide a fluidity of thought in the creative process. So this fluidity prevent idea from getting stuck. As P2 described, it shows something that continuously make you supportive flow, make your mind move so you won't getting stuck. So even if the image isn't what I'm picturing in my mind, it still feel flowed. And participants also describe the cross-modal impact the system has. For example, from the visual to kinesthetic, the participant described when the image show a dancer, you're watching the body movement in the space, and you're trying to enlarge the movement of your finger on the keyboard. And also from the visual to auditory, participants said when you see a night sky in the river, it's more like an open space and you tend to create sounds that are more penetrating to the open space. The generated image of the system are based on the perceived emotion of the input music. And this emotional association seems to be an important factor in fact influencing the creative process. Most participants were able to feel this emotional association, except for P1, who thinks the generated image a little bit generic. And this emotional association provide a mood to accompany the creative process. As participant described, I think it's create a mood to accompany my creative process. I guess it's keep you in the right work frame of mind, and also provide an immersive experience, which participants think it make him feel he was sort of there. And participant also thinks the system provided emotional guidance. And he said, I feel it's as soon as I recognize the solitude of this character. So for example, there was a swan of salt in an empty lake, and also like the person in a vast landscape. And my semantic brain start to thinking the solitude, the loneliness. I start to accept it and playing towards it. And it's worth noting that the participant particularly emphasized the influence of the system in improvisation. So P1 described the impact of the system as the actual material or like a constraint, which he tried to either match or change what has been shown. So he thinks it's kind of like working or communicate with the actual band. On the other hand, the composing task seems a little bit less infected by the system. So P2 did state that it's more like he was thinking about what's chord he wants to make or what's the sound he wants to make. He wasn't really paying attention to the generated image, which a little bit disconnected. So as a prototype system, our work have some limitations. So at the core of our system is GPT for music understanding ability. Based on our experiments, the GPT-4 has some basic text-based music understanding ability. However, its understanding of the complex music structure and the music context is quite limited. And also the ABC notation itself has some limitation in represented like the detailed dynamics and the articulations, which may also affect the music understanding. However, ABC notation is already like the most appropriate format we could find regarding to meet the limitation on the token length of GPT prompt. So future improvement will based on the fine-tuning GPT models for a better music understanding. And based on the participant feedback, the system generates a more like many photorealistic image in most of times. So more range of image should also be involved, like the abstract, the surreal, like the non-photorealistic image. And this style will be mapped to music information more closely. So to summarize our work, we designed a prototype of the real-time music-to-image inspiration system. So our system is based on the GPT-4 ability of music understanding. So most participants report the system as an engaging and novel tool, particularly valuable for improvisation. And overall, our exploration demonstrates the feasibility of the generative AI to be cross-modal inspiration in creative process like the music creation. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Question. Hello, hello.
Thank you for the talk. I guess my one question is related to why you consider these systems real time, because you are creating a static image, right? So if the mood of the song changes, the image also changes. Is that true?
Yeah, it's also changed.
So it's happening at some frequency.
Yeah, it's now it's happening like in the fixed time frequency, but ideally it should be like when you detect the music, like the mood change or the key change or some more like depends on the musical change. But this one's like the prototype, so at the beginning it's just changed like by the fixed time frequency.
Yes, I think that's quite interesting. So maybe audio to video could also be
Yeah,
something for more seamless transition, right?
yeah, that would definitely very interesting, but it's it haven't achieved that because like kind of like the computational limitation.
True, yeah.
Yeah, that would be really hard to achieve the real time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great. Thank you so much.
thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4. So quick questions and quick answers.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm interested in the music transcription system. How accurate is it? Does the play style of the like the performer or like the type of music affect how good the transcription is? And does it miss things like dynamics and that sort of things? And have you considered this? Like, could you use something else than just ABC notation to get also these details of the music?
Yeah, that's a good question because so as I mentioned in the slides, it's does have those limitations and it does like lose some like the performance level features or the dynamics articulation. It is true, but it's just really hard to find another format that can match the like limitation. Like I said, limitation of the GPT prompt. So you can use like, for example, the music XML, I guess. That one is maybe more accurate, but it would be like really long to represent the same pieces compared with ABC notations. So I just haven't find like another form which is more appropriate.
Another question here.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I was just wondering, in the beginning of your talk, it implied a little bit as if ChatGPT would react a lot on the header information of the pieces. But then you say it's real time, so it seems to see just the notes, right? So that's the question. Is it really that it just sees the note? And if it is like that, then you could use something much more simple than ChatGPT to just estimate some basic emotion expressed in the music. If you have some tonal music, of course, you could use something way simpler than ChatGPT and have something maybe more, valid, reliable.
Yeah, so when we analyze like the GPT's analysis on the music, we feel like maybe 70% or 80% of them are from like those very direct head information, but it does infer something. So for example, like the example I show, so that one actually also looks through the structure and infers and can actually infer something from the overall structure, the melodic structure. That would be something like the GPT-4 can achieve and not including the head information. So in future, we probably want it to like inference more to see whether it can include more information, which not in the head.
Two last questions, quicker.
Yeah, so thank you for the presentation. My question concerns the relation between the composers and the images. So of course, you're showing music by Chopin or Beethoven. These composers composed in a certain historical period and in a certain geography. So my question would be whether you considered kind of contextualizing the music, and if not, if you think this would help grasp the mood a little bit more, and also with the variety of images, right? Because if it's a romantic composer, maybe it could be something resembling romantic art in Europe, for example.
Yeah, I did consider that, but regarding to the application scenario of the system, so in most of the time, users gonna play or gonna create or improvise of their own choice. It's not limited to specific composers. So in terms of composer, I'm more thinking like maybe detecting the genres in the future. So something like that, so maybe can generate more like more related information.
Last question. Can you allow the next speaker to connect, please? Last question.
Thanks so much for that. Yeah, my question was related to if you've thought about going kind of like bypassing the language generation and going kind of like directly through latent space. kind of like generating an embedding of the music and then decoding that embedding in the image so that it's more real time, so that you don't have to kind of like translate it to language from music and then from that language then into an image. Like it seems that you could go directly from one latent space to the other and then have it be more real time and perhaps more generate a quicker feedback loop with the artist.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So maybe we can talk about it later more specifically. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next speaker is Samia Menon. She is going to talk about Smith enable mood consist multimedia for AI generated advocacy campaigns.
Yes, that's right. I'm Samia Menon. I'm from Columbia University, and my colleagues are Sitong Wang and Professor Lydia Chilton. And I'm so excited to be here this afternoon to talk about MoodSmith, our system for enabling mood-consistent multimedia for AI-generated advocacy campaigns. But before we begin, I want to invite everybody to recall the last piece of media that really moved them. It could be a TV show, a film, or a piece of theater, anything that had you leaving the building feeling profoundly different than when you first entered. If you had one of those experiences, then you know the feeling that this statement evokes, that emotion is vital to information processing and plays a key role in attitude formation. I know I feel the weight of this statement every time I see my favorite movie, which is Bicycle Thieves by Vittorio De Sica, especially the final scene. In this devastating final scene, the main character's son watches as his father attempts to steal a bicycle, and the audience sees the disappointed look on his son's face as he sees his father go against something that he's been standing for throughout the film. Now, there's a lot of reasons why this scene can make an individual emotional, but there are a few stylistic traits that really bring the point home. This creates a depressed mood in the audience through its sparse dialogue. Very little is said, so we're concentrated more on the other dimensions that are occurring in the scene, such as the mournful music that's creating a very, very somber tone, and the facial expression, the imagery that this actor who's playing Bruno, this child, in the movie is showing. All of these make sure the audience goes away with a feeling of sadness and guilt. However, after that, you might want to cheer up. And when I want to cheer up, I watch the first scene, just the first scene of another one of my favorite movies, La La Land. This scene is the exact opposite of the last scene of Bicycle Thieves. It's bright, colorful, and creates a delighted mood in the audience. It does this through exciting lyrics, upbeat music, and vibrant color and active movement. It gets everything. It has the dialogue, the music, and the imagery to make you feel energetic and at least me feel motivated to take on the day. So, there's clearly a connection between human attitude and behavior and the moods media evokes. And this is well explained by the circumplex model, which describes a two-dimension of emotion, valence and arousal. Valence is correlated to how positive or negative an emotion is, whereas arousal is more correlated to the energy of that emotion. For example, an angry emotion is a low valence, high arousal mood. When someone's angry, it's a negative emotion, but they have a lot of energy to do something about it, for better or for worse. On the other side, calm is a positive, a high valence, but low arousal emotion. When someone's calm, it's generally a good thing, but they're not going to do much to change the status quo. Understanding the relationships between valence and arousal for a particular mood is vital for any creator of a media who wants to evoke a response from their audience, but particularly for one group, nonprofits who are trying to create outreach communication. This is because the goal of an advocacy campaign or a piece of outreach communication is generally to inspire action in their audience. As a result, creating distinct moods that effectively influence audience behavior is a key part of that. Unfortunately, exploring moods that achieves the perfect mood for the message you're trying to create is a very cognitively taxing and labor-intensive task, especially for a lot of organizations who are dealing with pretty heavy subjects. In this example from the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty for Animals, it's difficult to turn an abandoned animal story into anything other than a sad mood message. So how do we help somebody explore what might be a better mood in order to get the action they want from their audience?
In addition, this becomes even more difficult because many nonprofits don't even have the resources dedicated to outreach communication in the first place, let alone spending the time iterating through moods and messages, trying to find the one that resonates. So that leads us to our main question. How can we support these nonprofit organizations by allowing them to explore many moods for an advocacy video? Well, we propose MoodSmith, a system that allows users to explore multiple moods and achieve a target mood for a given message through AI-assisted multimodal advocacy campaign creation. Through pulling the levers of text through a script writing step, scaffolded by our large language model, GPT-4, pulling the lever of visuals through a storyboarding step through Stable Diffusion image generation, and the last stylistic parameter of audio through music selection and the Spotify API, and tying them all together through this workflow with constant mood analysis through the system using GPT-4 and sentiment analysis, our system uses these tools to allow users to explore a spectrum of moods for their advocacy videos that are consistent across dimensions. For example, taking this initial input message, that 2.4 billion birds lose their lives every year in New York City due to collisions with glass buildings, and we should advocate for new construction to use bird-safe glass, we could explore two different moods for the message using MoodSmith. The first, depressed. Pretty sad. You feel pretty bad for that bird, I'm guessing right now. Let's try a different mood, something more on the bright side. Let's try delighted. So immediately you can see that the text, the tone of the text, the tone of the images, and the tone of the music are completely different in these two videos. Here's how MoodSmith allows a user to create that difference in mood. So we start off with the input. In this initial input stage, the user inputs their message, which is comprised of the audience, a problem, and a solution. In this case, New Yorkers, the same problem we discussed on the earlier slide, and the same solution that we should advocate for more bird-safe glass to be used in new construction, as well as our target mood. In this case, let's continue going for delighted. After that looks good, we move on to the script editing stage. The script editing stage is comprised of multiple scenes. If we look closer at one scene, we can see what the components are. The first is the narrative goal. In this case, scene 1 has the goal of engaging the audience's curiosity. The next is the image description. The first image will be an early morning Manhattan skyline with birds flying freely. The next is the on-screen text, which will be New York, a bird's paradise. Can you imagine it? And the last one is a positivity score, which uses AFIN-based sentiment analysis on the on-screen text and image description to detect how positive it believes this scene is. Because I'm going for a delighted vibe, an 80% for scene 1 sounds good for me, and I think the on-screen and image description supports that. So let's move on to the storyboard stage. I'm going to start off by getting some recommendations of what art styles are going to achieve the mood I want to get. So, children's picture book illustration, Art Deco architecture, and pop art. I like the look of children's picture book illustration, so I'm going to go with that and go ahead and generate the storyboard. This storyboard is very similar to the script editing stage and has a lot of familiar components. You can see on top is a color-coded background, which has to do with the positivity score. There's the narrative goal from before, there's the on-screen text, there's an image description at the bottom, but now we actually have that image to look at and get a better feeling of what the final video is going to look like. We also have alternatives as always, and in every step of the system, there's an opportunity to edit the prompt and regenerate. Once this looks good, we can go on to the final section, which is the music selection phase. We can have a main video preview as well as music recommendations. The music is recommended based on positivity and energy scores that are given to us from the Spotify API. These are analyzed against the current positivity and energy of the video and the mood that you decided to go for to create the final recommendation. When a song looks good, you can always preview the video with the song to see the video with the song. Now, we already saw the examples for delighted and depressed. Let's look a little bit into see what would happen if we chose angry or tranquil as the mood. Now, tranquil. So we see that using Moodsmith, we created 4 different videos for the same message that each had highly different stylistic properties in terms of text, image, and audio that evoked a different mood. But to analyze the efficacy of this, we conducted 2 evaluations. The first was the technical evaluation. We chose 2 messages, and for each message generated 16 videos, 8 videos without mood parameters, and 1 video with parameters for each of the displayed moods, so 8 in total. So 1 for surprised, delighted, contented, calm, tired, depressed, disappointed, and angry. For each video, 2 annotators were asked to identify the overall mood of the video, the overall mood of the text, visuals, and audio individually. Here's what we found from this data. We found that Moodsmith produced videos that achieved greater clarity of mood than the baseline. For baseline videos that did not have any of the stylistic parameters of Moodsmith, the unclear identifications when users tried to identify what the mood of the video was 43.8%. For Moodsmith, it was only 21.9%, showing that Moodsmith made videos had greater clarity of mood. The second is that Moodsmith produced videos that were reasonably accurate to the intended mood. In the analysis, 37.5% of the identifications were an exact match to the intended mood, 75% were a valence match, and 56.2% were an arousal match. Finally, Moodsmith produced videos that were more mood consistent across dimensions than the baseline. So out of a top score of 3, Moodsmith scored a 1.61 out of 3, while the baseline scored around a 1.02 out of 3. This difference had a p-value of 0.03 under a t-test, showing that the difference is statistically significant. The second evaluation was a user study in which 5 participants with experience working in nonprofit organizations were asked to create 2 videos regarding an issue that they felt passionate about using 2 distinct moods. We found that Moodsmith allowed participants to easily explore a diverse range of moods and create videos to achieve these moods. And we also found that Moodsmith supported users in creating videos that accurately achieved their intended moods and were consistent across text, imagery, and audio. In this graph, we can see at the top the accuracy of videos to target mood. All of these are scored out of 7. That was given an average score of 5.4 out of 7. And we also see the individual dimensions contributors to the final mood. Now, this is a callback to the previous presentation, but we really see the power of imagery in affecting somebody's mood. One user said that imagery really helped to solidify the problem and solution we were looking for in the campaign, and that they really looked at imagery to really detect what the campaign was all about, and that also means the mood of it. Music was also a big contributing factor. One user said that when the music works for the video, it contributes significantly to the mood. Another user mentioned how it was helpful to separate these dimensions into a linear step-making process like the Moodsmith system was, saying that it's one of the most easy-to-use systems I've worked with. So, in summary, emotion influences how we think. Generative AI has the capacity to explore different moods for an advocacy campaign, and I believe multiple forms of multimedia going forward. And we created a system that when given a mood like delighted, it can suggest text that is upbeat, images in a bright and joyful style like pop art, and music that is positive and energetic to create a mood consistent, mood effective advocacy campaign that delivers a specific message. To conclude, I just want to say thank you to everybody for listening to this presentation, and a huge thanks to Satong Wang and Lydia Chilton, because without their guidance and expertise, I wouldn't have had the privilege of standing up here and talking to you today. Thank you so much.
Hello, hello. Excellent talks. We have very good talks in this session.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. Well, I have I think it's a simple question. So is it good to have a mood consistent video? Isn't it preventing somehow to play with different emotions throughout the video, I mean?
That's a very, very good question. In fact, that's probably one of the largest requests from our users after the study. They said this is great for exploring a mood in general you want to achieve, but what people really want to see are mood shifts. So I think that's actually the space for future work, is being able to create a system where maybe at this timestamp we're going to achieve this, at this timestamp we're going to achieve this, and that's another parameter we can play with there. But I agree wholeheartedly. I think that's where we can really explore, and it's very exciting about this space.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. I think this is an amazing work, technically and creatively, but I also see a huge potential for it being harmful.
Yeah.
In the sense that I can see this being deployed on TikTok or Instagram and being exploited to, perpetrate some propaganda or like spread misinformation and so on. And I didn't really see that in your presentation. I'm wondering, do you have any concerns on that? Is that some work you're planning to do? Is this publicly available and so already exploitable by these kind of people and so on? Thanks.
Yes, and I 100% share your concerns. I know when I was going about starting this project, it was because I wanted to help a professor I had my senior year of undergraduate, saying that, oh, because we have like low resources in our outreach communication department, it would be very helpful if you could make it easier for people across the organization to tell their stories. So that was the goal. And then when I was working on it, I realized there's nothing barring other people besides people with the best intentions from using this work. When talking to my friends and collaborators who do work in these types of organizations, they said that even if they were to use the system, and some of them have started using it, it's only as a draft. It's always never going to have the final products I showed you there will never be presented as a final draft without human edits and a human touch. And I do believe that's how it should be used in the future. Right now, it's not publicly available. I've only given it private access to a few nonprofit organizations. So we'll see where that goes, but I definitely want to be wary of making it public too soon for that very same case.
Another question? Can we plug? Yes.
Sort of continuing on that,
Yes.
is there anything specific to nonprofit advocacy about this in that sense? Like, I'm imagining other marketing professionals might get excited about this too, for example.
Yes. So when I was creating this, the people who I was asking how to create the system for, the people I was interviewing and checking in and testing on, those were all people from nonprofit organizations. So that's why it's very like solution oriented, action oriented, based on like a fundamental problem and a target audience. But as you said, fundamentally, advocacy campaigns are just another type of advertisement. And just by twisting the words a little bit, anybody can use it for any purpose. So I share this presentation with the intention it was created for and who it was designed for. However, I do believe there's nothing stopping another individual from using this that follows a similar structure.
Another? No? Thank you so much for an excellent presentation. Now we have, let me see if I pronounce properly, Alexei.
No, Pavel.
Huh?
Pavel.
Pavel. Ah. Yeah. Sorry, I thought it was Alex. Well, Pavel. Humor mechanics, advancing humor generation with multi-step reasoning.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so today I would like to talk about humor generation, and I would like to present my work, which was done together with my co-author, Alexey Tikhonov, and we did this while working in World AI. I would like to start with a statement that humor is hard, and it's hard even for humans. And first of all, this is my personal observation. And besides that, if you would like to get another proof, you can just check one of the recent publications which try to summarize existing theories of humor and just check how many humor theories exist right now. And here I'm just showing one table from this publication of Warren et al. 2021, which tried to summarize all the existing humor theories. And they found, I think, around 20 theories. And they argue that, yeah, so that there is no common consensus on what are the important ingredients of the humor. So they agree on some things, they disagree on other things. The terminology is like not always well defined. Yeah, so humor is hard, and there is no final consensus here. Okay, now I would like to make another statement, and namely that humor is hard also for large language models. And in particular, there is a very common complaint to LLMs, and it is that LLMs often do produce memorized jokes. Yeah, so this problem was explored in depth in this great paper. ChatGPT is fun, but is not funny. Humor is still challenging. And the author tried to distill all the possible jokes from ChatGPT. And it turned out that ChatGPT most of the time was producing just the jokes from the list of the same 25 jokes, which the model memorized during pre-training phase. Okay, yes, here you can see one of the jokes. Why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything. And here you can just check the full list, 25 jokes, and usually ChatGPT just produces them. Okay, and it also matches our own observations. So in the world, we are trying to build virtual personas, NPCs for video games, and we are using different language models like GPT-4, GPT-3, Mixtral, Llama, and we are trying to create different characters powered by these models, and we see these jokes all the time. And sometimes it looks really weird because like last week I saw Mike Tyson making this joke about why don't scientists trust atoms. Okay. Yeah. And in principle, I also find this situation quite interesting because on the one hand here, so in general, we complain about LLMs that they do tend to produce often hallucinated made-up facts. So the facts which are not real, which were not in the pre-training data. And at the same time here, in the case of humor, we blame them for like, I mean, for producing like actually memorized jokes. And so in any case, we think that we need somehow to help LLMs and steer them to produce really novel jokes, really novel content. And we have the following approach. And it consists from the three main ingredients. First of all, as a first step, we propose to infer the humor mechanics, which we also call humor policy, directly from a data set of jokes, so in a fully data-driven way. The second ingredient is that we propose to use a multi-step process to brainstorm associations, which will be further used for the joke generation. And finally, we think that it's always great to make human assessment of the quality of the jokes and of the novelty, and we're doing this. Okay. Yeah, let's move on to the first step. How can we get infer the humor mechanics from the data set of the jokes and get this humor policy? So we tried multiple different approaches, and we think that this, in general, very difficult problem, which is not fully solved. Here, I'm just showing you one of the naive approaches which we tried and which you can find also in the paper. And it is as follows. So we take a data set of 100 human written jokes. We do human labeling. We take the best 30 jokes and extract policy using GPT-4 and like more or less naive prompting. So it's just two calls to GPT-4 given this data set of jokes. And here, as an example, I'm showing you what was inferred by GPT-4 from these 30 jokes. I'm not going really to read a lot of details here, so if you wish, you can check what GPT thinks are important building blocks. I can just say that in general, these principles, they match these antecedents of the humor, which were summarized by Warren et al. From these 20 humor theories. but we will also like look one more time at this policy. Here, I would like to give a bit more motivation behind this policy-based approach, which is also fully data-driven. So we think that it's very important to take into account that humor is subjective, and it may depend a lot on the cultural background. And for some people, some jokes will be funny. For other people, they will be really offensive. And it would be great to have some mechanics, some machinery, which will give possibility us to take this into account. And we think that this means that in order to do this, it would be great to be able to distill these humor preferences from the real data set of jokes and get this like building blocks which are important for these jokes, or we can also call this, I don't know, constitution, like in this constitutional AI. And besides that, if we have this policy constitution, which describes the principles of the humor, we also get the flexibility to control these principles during the generation so that we can adapt humor to concrete preferences of different people. Okay, the second step, as I said, is about brainstorming associations. Okay, so in general, we know that associative thinking is at the core of creativity, right? We also know that there are neuroscience experiments which show that during humor comprehension, we see that in the human brain, we see that the areas which take multiple concepts together are activated. And besides that, we can also right now check at this, take a look at this humor policy, which was inferred by GPT-4 from the jokes, from this data set of jokes, and check it. And we see that we are often talking here about the presence of multiple meanings, similar sounds, like contradictory meanings of sentences, some contrasting ideas. And this means, we think it means that it would be great to have some machinery which will produce these candidates, like sentences with different meanings, and which then further can be like processed and refined and fed in this humor generation algorithm. Okay, yeah, and here I'm presenting this procedure, so it's quite simple. We have as an input we have a topic about which we would like to make a joke. Then we ask GPT-4 to generate associations to the joke. Then we ask GPT-4 to get more details for each association. And then we have the final step when GPT-4 takes this list of associations and it merges similar associations, like combines complementary and removes outliers. Okay, yeah, and so in general, there are like many works which are exploring this this idea about associations. There are some examples of humor generation systems which rely on them, and also this procedure which I showed you on the previous slide. We borrowed it from some idea from some tools which try to facilitate this creative brainstorming. But I just wanted to show here that I personally myself also was very like motivated by this post, which was done by this amazing guy, Christian Zsigezi, a few months ago, where he states that in his opinion, if you want to have like strong general AI, so in the end, you need to be able to have machinery which will give you possibility to find more and more obscure connections between different areas that are less and less obviously connected. He also calls this like detective work, and this post motivates me like almost every day. Okay, thanks. Okay, so here I'm just presenting this the full pipeline which we use to generate jokes. Do I have pointer? Okay, maybe it's not needed. Yeah, so as I said, first of all, we have a seed topic on which we would like to make a joke, which is first fed into this brainstorming loop. So it comes to LLM produces associations, and there is a like this iterative loop where associations get kind of expanded, refined, combined, filtered, and then the final list of associations is fed into the LLM. LLM is all the time GPT-4 here. And these associations are fed together with humor policy prompt, which describes the humor mechanics and the seed topic. And as a result, we have a list of jokes from the GPT-4. Okay, like nice magical pipeline, how to know that it's like works and produces something sensible. So as I said, we decided that, yeah, so of course we want to do proper human assessment and human labeling. For that, we use platform scale AI, and we labeled few groups of jokes. In particular, we took human jokes from the Reddit collection. We created a group of jokes using GPT-4 and zero-shot generation. So just ask GPT-4 to make a joke on topic. We also, yeah, and also we have a jokes from proposed approach and also from some ablations where we switch off some parts of the pipeline. Okay, and here you can see results. I think the most interesting column which we have to look at is this known column, which tells us about the novelty of the jokes. So basically this column says how often the labelist said that the joke was known to them previously. So if we look here at this full pipeline, then it has a fraction of jokes which were previously known, 18%. If we look at this zero-shot method, which is zero-shot GPT-4 prompting, we see that fraction of already known jokes was much higher, 27%. Then at the bottom, you can see the results for the human jokes, Reddit dataset, and as expected, the fraction of already well-known jokes in this dataset, which you can find in the internet, the fraction of known jokes there is much higher. Anecdotally also, there is also another thing. So we are measuring also average funniness of the jokes, which is just a number from 1 to 5. And anecdotally, the average funniness produced by the algorithms, by the pipeline which we are proposing here, is significantly higher compared to the average, the funniness of average human jokes. Yeah, it's really interesting. What does it mean? It would mean just that this humor is really hard for humans, but it could mean also something more, maybe like interesting, namely that it could be the case that just the preferences of the people who are sitting at this Reddit community are different from the preferences of the labelers, which we have as Scale AI, which for sure represent a very specific slice of people, because they are like, so people who know English really well, they are, I mean, they have, according to our settings, they have expert English knowledge. Okay, and besides that, I think that there is this offensive column, which is also very interesting. And we see that our full pipeline on average produces 11% of offensive jokes, and Reddit dataset has a much higher fraction of offensive jokes, which again I think it means that GPT-4 just was, I mean, aligned to be really safe and not to be like offensive in like any case. At the same time, in case of Reddit community, so there are people for whom, for which like offensive jokes are okay. There are people for whom offensive jokes are really bad. So I think it's also really interesting. Okay. Yeah, so I'm like almost finishing. Yeah, so I would like first just to show you the list of the jokes, some jokes which were produced by the system. I mean, of course, they are cherry-picked, and of course, they are cherry-picked by the authors of this paper who have very specific preferences. Anyway, so please read them and decide yourselves what you think about them. I will just read two, the like first one and the last one. Yeah, so the first one was about, first one had topic computational, open source software, went to a party and spent the whole night forking. And the last one was about, like, the topic was Markov blanket. Why don't Markov blankets sell well at home stores? Because they only provide conditional comfort. Like, okay, thanks. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I will try now to answer questions if you have them. And as a bonus, I'm just showing few jokes which were produced by Asterion, who is a character from the Baldur's Gate 3 video game. And it was powered by Llama, which was fine-tuned, aligned on this data set, which was produced by GPT-4 using the pipeline, which I presented you during this talk. Yeah, thank you very much.
Questions?
Thank you. Very interesting stuff. So just sort of in the sort of method question, I guess. So you wrote 100 jokes, evaluated those by human annotators, and then input those 30 jokes to GPT-4 to get a humor policy. Is that right?
So it's a great question. In these experiments, what I've shown here, we used the policy which was obtained from completely different data sets.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm asking. But just sort of to make sure that I understand that was the method that you used, right? That was, you had some jokes that were generated by humans, then GPT-4 quote unquote read them and gave you a policy. Did you try just getting out humor policy out of GPT-4 without feeding it any jokes and see how that compared?
So we have the ablation where, so we don't have ablation where we have associations, but where we don't have policy, but we have ablation where we have just either policy or zero-shot GPT-4. And this concrete policy, which I've shown, it produces not convincing results. At the same time, we tried to go somewhat further. So we tried to, as I said, we have this data set from the Scale AI. And we have there, so we try to create from it pairwise data set. So bad joke, good joke, bad good joke, good joke. We try to distill policy from it. And we see that if we feed this policy, so now this humor generation pipeline gets really better. But this work is still in progress, so therefore I decided not to show it.
Hi. So thank you for your presentation. Very interesting. I was looking at the funniness scores, and of course they show that humor generation is very difficult and humor is subjective. You said all of this, but I wonder if you looked at the proportion of 4s and 5s in the Likert scale, because they would probably be more informative on the actual funniness.
4s and 5s.
Probably better than the average.
So in general, what this table shows that like we still don't have a good system to generate the humor, and I think these like 4s and 5s are very interesting cases, and we have to dive deeper into them.
But at the proportion of 4s and 5s, it's probably more informative than just looking at the average.
So basically quintiles. Maybe it would make sense to show such statistics.
Yeah, so just a suggestion.
Thanks.
Last question.
Yes, thanks for the funny presentation. So my take-home message was one of the points that you listed in the table is actually that the true jokes, so the Reddit jokes, they are more offensive and much less understandable than the generated jokes. So what should one make of that? Maybe it's also important property of jokes not to be understood by many people and to be offensive. How to deal with that? That seems to be something that is in good jokes, no?
You mean how to deal with the fact that Reddit jokes are like really kind of specific?
So is that maybe only because the Reddit jokes are bad, or what is bad? But it's a part of humor. I could, at least as a non-humor expert, I'm German, so how to so what to make of it? It seems to be important that a joke is addressed to specific people and maybe not understood by everybody. That you notice if you go from one country to the other, you don't understand.
Exactly. So I try to kind of express my own feelings when I've talked about this distillation of the policy. I hope that it may give possibility to take into account different preferences. And then we can kind of create jokes for like Germans, for people who are okay with offensive jokes, and for like other people. I mean, I personally like have definitely, I know I have very like specific preferences to jokes. And like I like, for example, like we have a lot of political jokes in my own country just to survive there. So it's like thing which really depends a lot on the cultural differences. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Now we have Joanna Rovira. She's going to talk about pattern generation using libraries built on graphic decomposition.
Hello, my name is Joana Rovira Martins. I'm from Coimbra, University of Coimbra, Portugal. And I'm here today to present pattern pursuit, pattern generation using libraries built on graphic decomposition. So, the unpredictability inherent in creativity often leads us to search for inspiration, involving us in time-consuming processes, and sometimes defining some limits and objectives, as well as visual exploration during the creative process, can help structure the thinking and the creation of new ideas. In these terms, the process of designing graphic patterns can be viewed as an interesting task, since it allows the exploration of versatile and almost infinite visual solutions within a controlled environment with rigid limits. Additionally, over the years, the creative thinking process of modern designers has become more complex, with a tendency for them to rely and access only digital references. And this behavior promotes a superficial exploration of references, mainly because of personalized content algorithms, and completely neglects the inclusion of pre-digital design works. And as we know, cultural awareness is essential for modern designers, because traditional sources can provide valuable insights in terms of expanded solution possibilities. With this in mind, we present Pattern Pursuit, an ideation system that allows designers to explore recognized pre-digital design sources on a conceptual and visual level, and using its visual elements, produce graphic patterns for wrapping paper. Wrapping paper, often depicting graphic patterns, not only maintains a medium widely used by pre-digital designers, the paper, but also offers a scale comparable to the reference works. So our main objective was to understand aspects related to originality, the influence of references on the produced patterns, and the impact of the constituent elements and composition on the design process. So this is Pattern Pursuit system architecture. It is essentially made up of 5 modules, which are indicated in yellow. The black boxes represent the results the user interacts with, and the gray boxes refer to the approaches used by the system. So starting with the gallery, the user has access to a series of design works, in this case of Sebastião Rodrigues' work, Sebastião Rodrigues. Sebastião Rodrigues was probably the first Portuguese designer to practice his profession full-time as we know it today. He had a very characteristic working process in which the starting point of his work was cultural content, such as patterns and textures. As such, it is a working process which has a lot in common with Pattern Pursuit's approach. We use his work as a foundational exploration, as Rodrigues has a vast portfolio presenting a variety of techniques. So we can consider using his work as a proof of concept, so that this system can later be prepared to handle the work of other designers. So on the gallery page, the user can analyze and get to know Sebastião Rodrigues' work and explore it semantically through one or more concepts. Using natural language processing and WordNet, the system creates a semantic space around the word given by the user, enabling conceptual search through the works in the gallery using the clip model. So according to the probability of similarity between the image and the semantically selected word, the works are selected to move on to the next module, the selected gallery. Here, users have access to the semantically selected works, and they can choose the ones they consider interesting to explore further. In a second version of this page, actually is the one shown here, we have included Llama 2, a large language model, and this was intended to provide the user with an explanation of the semantically selected words. So when the user doesn't really understand the reason the word was selected by the system, they can click on the info button and the system will return a possible explanation regarding the relationship between the input word and the resulting word. Once the user has chosen the works, we move on to the composition module, which is responsible for decomposing images into visual elements. These elements include typography, regular, irregular shapes, textures, lines, etc. The composition here promotes the exploration of the different layers in the design work, allowing designers to almost reverse the creative process followed by, in this case, Sebastião Rodrigues, and access information that would otherwise be unclear to access. An important aspect of this research is the fact that the main material used is analog, and had to be digitized, which means that the quality of the input images is lower than the digital ones. To overcome this challenge, the first step was to treat the quality of the images, making the colors more uniform, and then to identify the regions of the elements, we used the maximally stable stream regions detector. Once this is done, the user moves on to the composed gallery, and here the user is presented with the original work and the composed elements. This approach allows the user to understand where the presented elements originated from and maintain the information provided in the previous module about the selected words and their respective information. This way, the user has a clear access to the process conducted by the system so far, fostering trust in the machine. The final two modules consist of two similar evolutionary processes for generating units and patterns. Each has two agents, an evaluator, the user, and a solution generator, the system. The main objective is to explore the vast design space of these decomposed elements and converge on creative solutions. So after that composition, the user can explore compositional aspects of the pattern unit, and they have access to different features, such as the archive that acts as a repository and allows the users to save individuals they find interesting to explore later, and the expanded mode to help them to develop the unit and afterwards the pattern. As soon as users are satisfied with their units, they can evolve the pattern in terms of structure. And we defined 16 different possibilities to guarantee a proper solution considering the final medium. Here are some of the results created by our users. There are a lot. In this case, the last two, the user has used the same unit to develop more versions of patterns, which proves that the system allows visual exploration even when we are working with the same unit. Regarding methodology, the system follows an adaptation of diverse converge methodology as its inspiration. Many designers claim to break the problem down into parts by decomposing it, so diverging, to analyze and then synthesize it. And consequently, the whole pattern pursuits creative process follows this reasoning. In terms of experimentation, we conducted two semi-structured tests. As I said, our main objective was to understand aspects related to originality and the influence of references on the produced patterns and the impact of the constitute elements and the composition aspect on the design process. And so to get an overview of the participants' characteristics, we present their age, experience, profession, and gender. In the first phase, 13 experts were asked to evaluate the usefulness and effectiveness of each module, rate the final wrapping paper based on its originality, typicality, and value, and assess systems' ability in terms of serving as an ideation tool. 4 of the 13 experts involved in the first phase then took part in the second phase, which aimed to assess the effectiveness of Llama 2 inclusion. Here you can see the first results phase split into 5 different categories. Considering our main research concern, so the level of recognition of Sebastião Rodrigues' work and the balance between novelty and authorship, we can say that on average, users recognize Sebastião Rodrigues' work in the final patterns and considered that there was a balance between novelty and authorship. Although they also felt that if there was an imbalance, it tended more towards novelty. This shows that the composition aspects of the development of the pattern, the graphic pattern, tends to have more impact on the design process. One possible reason for that is that we identify 2 different objectives when using the system. On one hand, we observe that some users use the system intending to explore Sebastião Rodrigues' work and his thematics, and on the other hand, some users adopted a more exploratory stance, basing themselves on concepts they found interesting, regardless of whether they align with Rodrigues or not. By grouping them into groups, considering the input words, it was possible to see that the first group scored higher in prior knowledge of Rodrigues' work, relevance of the semantic search, text-image relationship, and recognition of Sebastião Rodrigues' work. This first group consisted of older participants, more experienced and predominantly specialized in graphic design. So this data may suggest that the level of recognition can be influenced by the user's intention to honor the artist's legacy, their willingness to explore new possibilities, and their knowledge of the work. These were the results related to each module, and also interface, archive, expansion, and personalized pattern exploration. These average answers obtained reveal an overall positive evaluation of each module, showing less effectiveness on the relevance of the semantic search. And considering this slightly negative tendency, a second test phase was conducted, in which the Llama 2 was used as a way of accessing the definition of the relationship of the resulting word, and also the relationship between it and the search word. And this test showed that when users have more information about the semantically selected word, their perception of the semantic search improves. To conclude, pattern pursuit has proved capable of generating creative and valuable graphic patterns through the collaboration with designers. Given its exploratory nature, it has also proved useful in the ideation process, offering a wide range of creative possibilities while maintaining a tangible connection with the style of the reference designer. And this research also contributes to a deeper understanding of the design process, showing that although the composition process tends to be the most impactful, a set of reference with graphic quality positively influences the final result. In terms of future work, it will involve deconstructing language barriers. This is because our universe of works are in Portuguese, and the whole system is in English. And sometimes it doesn't work as well as we expected in some situations. The other point is improving the composition into elements and increasing the number of parameters the user can influence and the machine's decision-making power. Thank you so much.
Questions?
So you selected Sebastião Rodrigues for this study, but how well does the system generalize if you wanted to select another gallery to be used instead of the one you used?
Okay, the whole system functions automatically, so it doesn't really matter the input image, just it will work.
Thanks for your talk. I really liked how your system it seemed like it had a lot of modular elements. And I'm just curious what other applications you foresee for your system or its modules.
So pattern pursuit can be used by designers to explore and integrate traditional sources on the modern projects, and also it aids in the ideation process. So which have in the creation of graphic patterns, sorry, which have always been used, and we are not expecting to stop being used. So it can serve as a tool for generating wrapping paper, designers, textiles, wallpapers, or other graphic patterns. So yeah, I think it is.
Another question? Thank you very much, Joanna, for your presentation.
Não, era este. Ok.
Now we have Hugo Oliveira, generation of putting riddles in Portuguese with prompt chaining.
Hello, so yes, I'm Hugo. I'm here presenting the work, well, mostly by Márcio Lima Inácio, which is a PhD student under my supervision who cannot be here today. So the context for this work was a system that I developed a few years ago based on mostly on rules and on some resources, which generated riddles in Portuguese. So basically the idea was to start with a concept that could be split in two and then get words related to each of these two parts, and then use a template or use these relations to fill a template that would finally generate a riddle, which could be funny, but not always. This is an example for English. Here so Márcio is working on the humor for Portuguese, recognition and generation, and he's starting to explore the generation. He just started it very recently. And one thing that we tried is what we are presenting here. So the idea here was to check to what extent we could replicate what this system that I developed a few years ago, to replicate it with a large language model, trying to have a parallel working with a chain of prompts that would ask the model more or less the same and see what it would come up with. For this, since we are working in Portuguese, we use the state-of-the-art language model for Portuguese, a chat-based model called MariTalk. It's also, unfortunately, a closed model as GPT, but it was cheaper. It was very cheap to use, and it worked quite well for Portuguese. It was trained from scratch for Portuguese. And so this is quite straightforward. We had the original system that started with this list of amalgams and then would get relations from a knowledge base like a word net, relations with each part of the word, and we wrote a prompt that would get us the same information from the model. So that is the prompt. The prompts are in Portuguese, the original were in Portuguese. Here we have a translation to English with a different riddle so that it makes sense. So basically translated this to a prompt. We got some results. This was the first step. We got the related words. In the second step, we gave a new prompt with a template where we asked the model to use these related words to create a riddle. By filling that template, it would generate a list of riddles. As the system, the rule-based system also generated a list of candidate riddles, starting with the concept that could be split. And in the end, the rule-based system would apply some heuristics for selecting the best riddles based on frequent words and recognition of words. And we did the same with the language model. We asked it to select the best, actually the funniest. In this case, we actually did say the funniest out of the generated riddles so far. And that's how we replicated it. We also took this opportunity. Well, we needed to evaluate our output, and we took this opportunity to explore this measure that has been used in the text-to-speech community. Basically, we had 100 pairs of riddles by each of the approaches, and we asked native speakers to decide which they preferred. So for the same input concept, we had riddles by the two approaches, and we asked the humans which they preferred, and they didn't know which one was generated by what. In the end, there was not much difference. So these were the results. The differences are not significant. So to be honest, none of them generates extremely funny riddles. Some are. For instance, the LLM generated a very good one out of the 100. The others were okay or not funny. Okay, I'm just finishing, so this is pretty straightforward. So you cannot say that the rule-based system is better, nor that the large language model is better. So in summary, we replicated this rule-based system with the large language model. We adopted prompt chaining. We evaluated this with this metric with the CMOS, and we could not see that the LLM outperformed the rule-based system. It is indeed more flexible, not fixed with a set of rules. It generates fluent text indeed, but so far we could not see that it would outperform the rule-based system. But of course, by being flexible, we could possibly explore other features that we could not explore with the rule-based system. Another interesting thing is that with this, we have slightly more control on the large language model, and we can check what is the output in every step, in every prompt. So it gives us a little bit of explainability and more control. That's it. So if you have questions. Thank you.
Questions?
Sorry. Thank you. Interesting stuff. I'm wondering a bit about sort of if you did any sort of evaluations on the energy and resource use of the LLMs compared to the rule-based system. Obviously would be a lot more, but I'm just curious if you have any sort of idea about how much more.
I didn't understand the question. I'm
So
sorry.
the LLMs use a lot of energy and a lot of compute.
Oh, no, no, we didn't. And this is, it's not GPT, but it's, well, a Brazilian company that trained this model from scratch. And it's also, there is a free version, but we use the paid one. So the access is the same through an API and they control it. But in theory, we could replicate this in an open large language model and see, and actually apply this idea. Oh, by the way, I was seeing the program this morning, and I noticed that Sony Ville is going to present a work that is somehow generalization. I don't know if he is here or not. And I told Marcio, and he said, "Oh my God, what a coincidence!" Yeah.
Another quick question? No? Very quick.
Oh, you're there.
Thanks, Hugo. I was wondering, you're essentially using the LLM as a rule-based system. So that would
Yes.
explain why you're not getting any difference. You're giving both systems the same rules.
Probably, but the LLM is not limited by the knowledge base like WordNet that we were using. Yeah, that's probably the only limitation if we think about it. But yeah.
Maybe if you let it stretch its legs a bit more, you
No,
you
and
get
also
better
in the
results.
evaluation, also in the selection of the best, we precisely asked for the funniest joke, and in the rule-based system we had the heuristics. But yeah, we need to explore it. To, as you said, spread its legs. Sorry.
No, stretch its legs.
Stretch. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Hugo.
It's a joke, like a generation.
Okay, we have the last presentation of the session. It's also a short talk. Luis is going to present to us automatic generation of expressive piano miniatures.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, sorry, it's short talk, so I'll try to be quick. I'm presenting some work that my supervisor, Simon Colton, big in the ICCC community, has built on top of a music generation model that I've been developing over the last 7 months or so. So yeah. The other co-authors, Barker and Keshav, also Simon's students. Cool, so a little brief bit of background what I mean by music model. What I mean in this context isn't a audio model that generates audio. I mean a model that generates notes. So if you've worked with MIDI before, then you'll know that you can describe music as like a stream of notes. And so, yeah, that's what I mean. Essentially, if you've heard of music transformer or things like that, this architecture is very similar, although it's a bit more modern. It's essentially trained to predict notes in a straight line. So instead of generating audio, it will generate, play the note C, then play the note D, yada, yada. Yeah, so yeah, little joke. What is my purpose? You predict the next note. Yeah, and the interesting thing about these models is that unlike any rule-based system, they really don't have any intrinsic understanding of music, only data. So they only learn from data. They learn everything from data. I guess the only thing you could argue is that they predict tokens in a kind of autoregressively in a straight line, but really they don't know anything about harmony rhythm, or even what the tokens mean at the beginning. So these models are quite interesting, right? Because they're trained to predict the next token. And so the natural usage of them is as kind of like an autocomplete, like a really good autocomplete, which is, from a creative standpoint, I think quite interesting. Yeah, so here's a really good example in case you're not familiar. If you use a normal language model before it's been instruct fine-tuned, or like basically before they turn it into ChatGPT, you're working with something like GPT-3, if you use that back in the day before ChatGPT was released, you get this weird thing, right, where you don't really ask the model for what you want, and instead you kind of give it a beginning and you hope it auto-completes in the way that you want. So here's an example from Macbeth. The prompt is in black here. When shall we three meet again? And it continues. Whereas with ChatGPT, you would ask, give me the beginning of Macbeth. So it's kind of different. And in the context of music, we don't really have good data sets for this alignment, or even really a strong notion of what this alignment would even mean, to ask a musical question in musical language and get a musical answer, I think. So yeah, the question is, you have this autocomplete system. How do you get it to create pieces of music which are interesting from an artistic standpoint? And that is predominantly what Simon was interested in. So he built this kind of system on top of this model. Yeah, so what is the problem actually? So to what degree is prompted autocomplete creative? It turns out the best way to get good, I mean, at least from my perspective, the best way to get good generations out of these models is to give them really high quality prompt, right? Because a probable continuation of a good piece of music is a good piece of music. However, they're trained on a lot of data, and a lot of that data is not very good. So if you give it something bad, it'll be like, oh yeah, I'll complete this in a way that's not artistically interesting. Also, completely unprompted generations are very high in variance. So what I mean by that is that if you don't give it anything to go off of, it kind of it's very random in the beginning, and then it will continue it in the way it feels is most probable. So if you generate, a random piece of music, it could play the note C 100 times in a row, which isn't very interesting. But if it just so happens to play the note C 5 times in a row at the beginning, a 6th C is pretty probable, actually. Okay, cool. So Simon's main thing is how can we transfer this data-derived musical understanding to creative applications? So basically what he did is to take advantage of the main kind of benefit of using these models is that you can generate a lot of unconditioned pieces. So what he basically did is he introduced this secondary AI audio model to listen to like 100,000 or 10,000 small generations that had been generated which suffer from this high variance problem. And then basically get this secondary AI listener to assess to what degree the generation is good. So basically prune out all of the bad ones and get a bunch of ones which are interested. And yeah, we found a very strong correlation between human and model preference, which is quite interesting, that this listening model, it would listen to the generations, and if it judged it as classical or jazzy, then typically that meant that we thought it was just classical or jazzy too. So this is my party question to the audience, is given that these models get better and better, how do we align them to be creative agents or more than just autocomplete or just something interesting? And as an example here, I have a piece of audio here which begins with I just actually generated this about 2 hours ago, but it begins with a waltz by Chopin. So I'm curious if you guys would think this is creative or if this is just mimicking. Cool, thank you.
Right. Questions?
So the answer to that question would be not to align. Then you can become creative. And I am a composition teacher, actually, at the Academy of Music in Gothenburg. And I would tell that student they live in the wrong century, or maybe 2 centuries back. So yeah, basically we have the optimization mimetic problem versus exploration. And it's still unsolved.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's exactly what Simon thinks too, which is what motivated this whole thing. It's you know, I think there's a degree to which I think everyone, even if you use image generators, you feel something here where when they get too good, they get boring. Kind of when they were a bit worse, they were really cool, at least from my perspective. And when they're really perfect, they kind of lose a bit of something. And it's kind of where to draw that line, you know. Even Simon giving the model 5 notes at the beginning kind of made him feel a bit weird, you know. For me, 5 notes is okay, but yeah.
Possibly it's also a big bias in the training set because maybe it's trained on very lame old music and not on what we contemporary crazy people do.
It's actually trained on a lot of contemporary stuff too.
It is? Okay.
So just to pick up the experts term, so the lame old music. So there have been.
I love that stuff.
There have been also some people like studying the expressive of piano performances in this lame old music. And so I just wonder where does the expression then come from? Because there's always the idea that the expression is something that lies in the performance in this kind of thing, right? But you talked more about like continuation of a composition, which would be another thing in that kind of cultural specific music thinking.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange, right? These models are capable of generating expressive stuff. In a sense, in one way you could view it, a piano is identical to a MIDI file if you were to play it back exactly. it's kind of interesting because it's a composition and a performance at the same time. It's kind of a new thing. It kind of feels like, and the weird thing about the data is that a lot of the data is very blocky and it kind of sounds like video game music from the 90s, because there's a lot of that on the internet. That's not what I'm interested in generating. And so finding a way to basically say, look, learn music from this, but don't give me that inference time. I think is an interesting question.
Clear question?
I was just going to say, kind of related to the first comment, probably the problem is not the alignment itself, but what you're aligning it towards.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the chat-based ones just align towards a dialogue like generation, and then the previous ones to just generating something within distribution.
Yeah.
But I suspect you can align them to be novel and valuable and interesting. It's just a matter of what function you use to align. You can vary the temperature as well. So I feel like it's maybe alignment is too broad. It's more what are you aligning them towards, and that's an interesting question.
Yeah. It's a very yeah. What are you aligning it towards? I mean, yeah, there still is this problem at the beginning of the generations where it's very high variance, so it will sometimes, anyone who's played around with these models know they kind of have failure modes, and it's kind of aligning against that. For me, alignment means even if I suggest something and I play a bad piece on the piano, perhaps it will understand, just like ChatGPT, if you use bad grammar, it will continue replying with good grammar. That's something that I don't think has been explored a lot in the context of music models. I think is very interesting. Alignment could mean a lot of different things, but it definitely in its raw pre-trained state, I think it's very interesting.
Thank you very much, Luis. Just one last comment. Please, all the speakers for the next days, before the session starts, come with Joao to check that your presentation works properly. Yes? So before the